I find amazing is the fact that so many Jewish people congregated in Lebanon, Pennsylvania, and why? And then why was this a wonderful place to grow up? I mean, it was just, those of us who grew up here keep on coming back. It's wonderful. So, how? How?
Okay.
Well, that should have been one of the questions we
We'll
get to
hold
get
it
that.
as a question for, yeah.
Well,
We'll
I
get-
can start with, I'll start with what I know
What you know.
from Europe. They lived very, in a shtetl in Pakroy. My father though was born in Kupasik. I have a map of these places in Lithuania. But it was really tough there. I don't know if this is true that they brought the cow in when it got real cold because into the house so it wouldn't.
Did they have dirt floors?
What?
Dirt
Floor?
floor.
I think so.
Have
What
what?
did they do for
Dirt
living?
Floors.
Dirt floors.
I think so. I'm not
Yeah,
certain now. I
Yeah.
think I heard reference to it.
Okay.
And they were really, now, I have to separate, I mean, my mother and my dad were two different families, they didn't marry until they
They
got to
didn't meet
here,
until they got to Lebanon.
to Lebanon, and then I'll tell you how they met. I don't, anyway, but there was a hard life, and they looked forward to, but some of, Pop-Up's family, my father's family, came before them, and they knew, they had contacts in the United States, so they had somebody to come to.
Did RB go first, or did they come together? RB and
RB came
And
first.
Sam.
So
Well,
they-
no, RB came with
Sam?
Sam
okay, so they
and
came.
Rose and Fanny.
Okay,
So did
But
they come with
their
their parents?
father, wait a minute, their father came first.
okay.
And actually, when they got here, the father had died. And I only found recently where he's buried in New York. They actually were in Steelton, that's a town outside of Harrisburg. It's amazing, they came to New York through Ellis Island. And
Who's they? Say, RB?
RB.
Oh.
Do you know what year,
Oh, so they didn't come to New York.
what year they came?
I don't remember.
Now, if it came to Ellis Island, it will be
They
on there,
came
no?
Well, they didn't come through Ellis Island.
But you know what, I must tell you a story that,
Oh, she said
Okay.
somebody told me that, on the way over, on the boat, that RB, he was a devil. He was,
There you go.
So that's where Beanie got it.
My dad-
Okay.
that he climbed a
The
smokestack.
yeah.
You remember?
My dad told that story.
Yeah,
RB
And-
climbed up the smokestack all the way to the top.
and his mother,
His mother was freaked
Hudda,
out.
she yelled to him,
That's fine.
Bircha, come on, Hunter. I've come down. His
Right.
name was Benjamin. Bircha, and that's all that he told us. That we were hysterical. He stayed at my house for a little while before he passed away. And then,
RB?
Sam.
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 yeah, Sam. Anyway, that was one incident. Do you remember anything else that they said?
Well, Dad
about
was
the
pretty young when he came.
Yeah, Hilly.
So how old was he, do you think?
I don't know.
He was a little
Probably.
kid.
Just a
RB
little
was
kid.
about 4 or 5 years old.
He's climbing up a smokestack.
How old was he? He was
On a
5 years
ship.
older. We didn't say how.
Older.
Older.
Oh, older.
So
or
how
5
old
years
was he?
Older than
older?
my dad.
Oh, okay.
Maybe by
Thank
5
you.
or 6. They
Okay.
were little kids. I think my dad was 6, and maybe
Yeah,
he was
I bet.
9 or 10.
Right.
So RB was like 15.
Okay.
And so,
No,
but they
5,
were coming to Harrisburg. First of all, their father wasn't here. He died in the flu epidemic. That's what I.
Which would
And
have
for
been
a long time, they
1919?
looked to see where he was in a Lebanon hospital, and we've tried to find a record of the year and how he got to a New York cemetery, except in New York, they had a lot of organizations that were taking care of immigrants.
Right.
And those groups of people, I don't know. Anyway, and they were shipped to New York, on Staten Island is the cemetery. I have the name at home.
Really?
And if I ever get there, Sean, Marty's nephew, was gonna take me to that cemetery. Now he's not in New York anymore. But anyway, now what?
How did the name Levitts come to be?
Well, at Ellis Island, their name was
Udalevitz.
Udalevitz.
Udelevitz.
Udelevitz.
Udelevitz, no?
Udelevitz,
Udelevitz,
we would
right.
say,
Okay.
but Uda was in front. And,
Does that mean Jew?
and so they
Yeah. Yeah.
they dropped that in Ellis Island, and that was their name, after that, just Levitz,
Daddy pronounced it Udalevitz.
Udelevitz.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Was that their choice or was it the bureaucrats' decision? How did that happen?
I don't know. A lot of names changed.
Yeah.
Marty's father came, he was a tailor,
Udelevitz
and
Furniture.
it was, that was, I think, Portnoy. And they said, what do you do? And he said, I'm a tailor. So he said, well, your name is Schneider. A Schneider in, German is a, so,
And in Russian or whatever, isn't Portnoy, it means tailor too.
yeah.
What name?
Ah.
Portnoy also means tailor, but in a different language.
Probably Russian.
Russian.
Oh, and one other thing Mama mentioned already, they used to be terrified because the Cossacks would drive through on horses, ride through their village, whoop it up, and the kids were in the house, scared to death. And they also, their father was a bricklayer. He built fireplaces, I think out of brick or some kind of stone. And he'd be on the road in the countryside doing that for people. And when they were alone, they had to be so careful, and they were scared.
This was whose family now? This was Mama or Papa?
That was Mama.
Whose family was this you're talking about now?
Mama.
Mama.
Yeah.
Mama.
Your
No,
mama and
Papa.
Papa and my
Papa.
my
But
father.
That's
they're
their
different
when
when
they were little
alone.
kids,
Oh,
the little
no,
girls.
Papa, that was
That's
Mama.
Papa's family.
Yeah,
And that was in Lithuania?
Oh.
Lithuania.
When I went to study in Kiel, Germany, that was on the Baltic, and before I went, I was talking to Uncle Morris Smaney, and I said to him, I'm going to be very close to where you were born. Is there anything you want me to do when I get there? And he said, take a club, and the first person you see, hit him on the head.
That's my grandparents. That's my other side said the same thing. Yeah, they didn't like him too much.
Of course not.
That was our mother's family.
Right.
So where did the Smaney family enter? They didn't come through Ellis Island?
That,
Well,
I don't know.
I thought it was Baltimore, but I could.
Yeah,
They must-
they didn't all come together.
No,
My,
they came to Baltimore.
They came to Baltimore. Well, they didn't all come together. My mother and her father came last. She came with him. Aunt Sarah was already here, and they landed in Baltimore, where they had family.
Sarah.
Your grandmother.
Smaney,
My
yeah.
grandmother.
Yeah, this is Smaney.
So, anyway, they got here and they came to see the relatives. The Lund family was already in Harrisburg and Steelton, and the father wasn't here, so the kids were doled out to different families in Harrisburg. And some of those families were like half-brothers and sisters to pop up in RB, because their father had I have a chart there, a first marriage, and had like 5 kids, and they came earlier. They lived in Harrisburg, and each one took somebody. My father lived with the Klumpuses, which was a married name, but one of those half sisters and brothers, and each one. And then we got close to those people, the Levin girls. I don't know. We talked
Tilly.
about Tilly and Francis and
Yeah,
Helen
Lil.
and Sam, and I might be missing one. But
Was
uh,
Lil
Lil.
Catnip, was she one?
No.
Lil lived in Lebanon for a while. In her later life, they had a shoe store on
Right.
Cumberland Street. She married Dave Cabinet.
I remember going in there and using the X-ray machine and looking at my feet.
They have an X-ray machine recycling.
No, you can't do that.
They have
Stay there too long.
And so anyway, but then their older brother, half-brother, Louis, that was my father's half-brother, he came to Lebanon early on and had a little candy store or something on I forget his name.
Weidman Street?
Weidman Street. And at some point my mother used to say he had the wanderlust. He wanted to see more and do more, and so he left, and your grandfather bought the store, and then my father was glad to have, he took my father in to help, with the store, and your grandmother started having kids. with 3
So was it
kids.
this, but it wasn't the Levitt store, was it, or was it the Levitt's
The
location?
The first Levitt store was
I
on
don't know
Weidman
what
Street.
it was. Well, I don't know what it was called then.
But it wasn't a furniture, it was a candy store.
Oh no, it was like a candy store and then a grocery store, a general store, and it was a lot of other people, ethnic people in that neighborhood, still Serbian, and my father learned all those languages to talk to the customers, and they would do a lot of baking, and they would buy 25-pound bags of flour and stuff like that and he would deliver things in a wagon, and he knew all those people, so that's how he had a lot of customers when they finally, and then they got into selling more things in the general store. The first thing they got to sell was wash machines, and they used the wash machine that had those ringers, and other stuff, and then at one point, I think they decided that they could sell more furniture. And they moved to another place on Maple Street. It was an organ factory. Now, do you know anything about that? Yeah. So they got in more furniture. And then what?
But I wanna back up a second, how the Pop-Ups married the Mum-Mums. How did that happen?
Oh, well, I'll tell you that. They, Pop, your father,
It's a singing
your
group,
grandfather
and the
brought
moms.
Sam, my dad, to help in the store, and your mom had 3 boys, and so my mother was living in Steelton with the family, the Wagenheims. And brought her to live with them, and over the store on Weidman Street, and to help with the kids. Well, at one point, somebody decided that Sam and Lena should marry.
It wasn't Sam and it wasn't Lena.
It was
Well,
Sarah.
somebody
RB
else. And Sarah.
So Sarah and RB had been
Sarah was
married
a
and had
judge.
3 kids before they even got married.
No,
Married.
before Sam and
Right.
Lena.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, that's what I'm saying, before Sam and Lena
Lena.
got married, they
Yeah.
had already had 3 kids.
They had
They were
3
younger.
kids.
Yes,
My
right.
dad was living with them and my mother was living with them.
Right, 'cause Rachel,
That was obvious.
They're already
Rachel
living in the same
Rachel was the
household.
oldest.
Oh, they were in the same household?
Rachel what?
Rachel was the oldest.
Older, yeah.
Right, and
She
she was
was
just
born
about
in
my mother's
19
age, which was after the
Rachel
4.
was born in 1920, but your mother was born maybe
Now,
in
Sid was-
21 or 2.
Right.
And
So she
Lester-
came in.
Lester Eder was born the same year as your mother, Blossom.
Right.
And you know what? And then eventually, we came along, and my parents moved out.
You got a little crowded.
There was a funny story that my father, they went to get a marriage license. Do you remember this? And he forgot that he drove her there or something.
He what?
He left her there. I don't.
They got married and he left.
Left the bride there.
No. See, what's the story? How does the story go again? Start from the
It
beginning.
was at the gas station.
I think he understands.
Oh,
Oh, right, I did hear
He stopped to gas up at a gas station, and my mother went into the West Room. And my dad gassed up and got in the car.
That's really romantic, right?
And they had just got married? It Looks like they're married.
Well, that was-
I don't know when that was.
That's
No,
like an
I
urban
don't know if they were
legend.
married, I think.
Now
they
I
were
know where I got my
married.
jeans from.
Poor Marie.
The way I heard that story
Wait till I
was
tell
they
that
were
one.
on the Pennsylvania Turnpike, stopped to go potty. Uncle Lena was in the bathroom. Sam got done because guys get done before women. He got in the car, drove home. Meanwhile, Lena comes out. Where's Sam? So I guess she called Rachel. This is the way I heard it. And Uncle Sam got home. Where's Lena? Where's Lena? And meanwhile, Rachel was already on the way to pick her up. At least that's the way I heard the story. I don't know.
I think that story grew over the years.
I'm sure it did.
It's an urban legend.
Do you know how RB and Sarah met, actually? How they got married? RB and Sarah?
Well, they were fixed up by these people, the Wagenheims.
Uh-huh.
They were very young, like 15 and 16 or 16
Oh,
and
yeah.
17 or
Oh, that's
I
why.
think your
Okay.
father, your grandfather was maybe he was 18, maybe 16.
I have a picture of them,
And
and
my
they really.
father was real, like 10 or 11.
You know what year they got married?
Anyway, I feel bad that I don't have all,
Oh, this is
Oh,
great.
that's great.
This is wonderful.
Yeah.
anyway,
We'll
so,
fill in.
so that went on from there. They got into business, and my dad was a good salesman, and he knew the language, he knew the people, he could talk to everybody. And of course then the big boys came along. We sort of thought they were gods. Ralph, Leon, and
They
because
thought they were
were-
going. Ryan and Sam. That's where they got that
Sam
idea.
and Aunt Blossom, right?
What? No, no, it was Raisin.
But
Raisin.
they
Raisin.
flew airplanes, they owned,
Oh.
even when they were in high school, they were doing, car racing and
Ralph,
building cars.
Ralph had
and-
had a racer.
Huh.
He actually had a driver that drove it, but there was a fairgrounds in Lebanon where they did race it. And Ralph used to keep the racer behind the house on Cumberland Street. There was like a garage in the back of the alley.
And he was in
uh,
high school at the time, probably, right? Or was he more older?
He was older at that
But I
point.
think he was still home then, that's before he went to.
Yeah, he was still living in Cumberland Street there.
Didn't they go to the yeshiva though, the
Right.
boys?
The boys went to
They were
Baltimore.
I know that the story said my mom sent the older boys to Baltimore to yeshiva.
Yes, when they were teenagers, they went to Baltimore, and they rented an apartment, and they hired a woman, Mrs. Fott, Focht, a Dutch lady, to keep house for them. And they all studied in the yeshiva, and they were very learned. That was like high school, I guess, or part of high school. And then, of course, they all went off to, I can't believe that in those years that Ralph went to University of Pennsylvania. He graduated from there.
Huh.
And,
Ralph had a racer, I told you, and he put me in the racer once, and I could have been maybe 4 years old. So the only thing of interest to me would be to blow the horn. So I tried to blow the horn, but there's no horn on a racer, it's just a bolt. And I remember pushing on this bolt, and I didn't hear a horn, and I said, "This car's no good."
So anyway, and so we always, thought whatever they did was wonderful. And
Did Leon also go to University of Pennsylvania? Leon?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think
So-
I
so-
read he went to Wharton, didn't Leon?
Yes.
Yeah.
So our side of the family, they sent to yeshiva. Were you guys religious growing up? Was
We
it?
did, well, my brother, we had a brother between Rachel and I. He went to yeshiva in Baltimore also, but he passed away when he was 15. He got sick.
Really?
His name also was Azer. You know, at the generation, my mother's father's name was Azer. And then the next generation, there was an Azer Smaney, an Azer Levis, Sid, and
Oh,
my
Sid
brother
was Azer.
Azer.
Sid was
We
Azer?
called-
Yeah, that's his real name.
We called him Ingy.
Inky?
So they didn't have a
Indy.
problem naming people that
We
were
had all
alive.
these crazy names
No,
in
they
my
just
family.
gone.
Right.
No.
Billy, Sussy, Mucci, and Ingy.
Cucky.
Where did
Cookie.
Mucci come from?
I,
What? The Mucci. What was Mucci?
Mucci, well, his name was Shmuel. Shmulka, or whatever came out, it came out Much.
That's quite a transformation.
Yeah, exactly.
I was the only
Maybe
one.
Hilly named him. He couldn't say it, or he said Much.
I was the
And then
only
there
one
was
that had
no-
a name that related to my name. You know,
Right.
I was Hillel. So,
Hillel.
Well, or
so
Hilbert.
they named me Hilbert, but my Yiddish
Hebrew
name
name
was
is
Hillel.
Hillel.
So Hilly from Hillel's close. But I was the only one that had a name that made
A
sense.
decent name.
So you had an old, so there was a child, there was a son after Rachel who passed away?
Between
Yeah.
he was an age between Rachel and Sussy.
And
Sussy. And what happened to, how old?
He
was
had nephrosis.
He was 14.
Nephrosis.
14, and he was living in Baltimore. He lived with a family,
Cause he was going to yeshiva.
and
He was going to
got
yeshiva.
Going to yeshiva,
and he got
yeah.
sick there, and they had the best. He had the best care. I think it was Johns Hopkins or whatever. But then they didn't do transplants, kidney transplants,
He had kidney
Probably didn't
failure.
even have antibiotics.
kidney failure. It was awful. I was in 4th grade. I sort of remember. Rachel took it very hard because they were close in age. But so that was pretty sad. But you know, my mother was busy with the 3 of us, Butch, Hilly, and me.
What I remember that is I didn't know what, or maybe I said this already, I don't know.
No,
I didn't know what death meant. I mean,
Uh-huh.
people were, they were sitting shivering, people were coming, and
You were born already.
there was a lot of tears and everything.
But you were young.
And I
you were-
said, why is everybody crying? I'm not crying, you know. I didn't know what any of it meant. I didn't know he wasn't coming back.
Yeah.
he was already gone. He was in Baltimore.
What's
Right.
He was
that?
already in Baltimore. He was already not home. He was already gone.
Yeah, but he
wasn't coming
yeah,
back.
He wasn't coming. He didn't realize anyway. So then, well, we managed and we grew up and, now is your family in, I don't know what more I can say about them, but they were busy and they were successful and they start traveling more than my parents did. They were home and
So where'd they travel to?
Miami Beach.
Of course.
No, they went on
Good
vacation.
Good then.
What did they do with all the kids
With all the kids.
when they traveled?
Mom had a lot of help. I think that same lady, Mrs. Fott, came back and stayed with the kids. And, you know, she was in the country earlier and she sort of learned more of the American ways and she was a terrific lady. And she and my mother were very close. My mother would consult her. Rachel.
What was the age difference between your mother and Sarah?
I think it was only about 2 years. And my mother used to consult Aunt Sarah about things because she knew a lot. So, anyway.
The building of the store on Cumberland Street was a big deal. And in fact, I'm not sure, but I think it's still the newest building on Cumberland Street. The store was on they had a store on Cumberland Street right across the alley where Miller Auto was at one time. And it got too big for it and built this store across the alley. And then they kind of outgrew that and they expanded by buying the 4-story building next door that used to be a food fair. Was it food fair?
Food
Yeah,
fair.
it was a food fair, which was a big chain grocery store around here. And then, so between
So
the
that's
two
where
buildings-
that's where it is right
Right.
now. That's what it is.
So then that was 4 floors, the top floor being storage for smaller items.
The lunchroom.
Yeah, that's where we would have lunch from junior high school. We'd go and eat lunch up there.
We used to go up there and it was Michael, Danny, and me, and because at that time they used to pack lamps and popcorn. And they had big,
Real popcorn?
real
No.
popcorn. Air popcorn, so there was no oil, and there was boxes of popcorn. Of course, we used to dare each other to eat it, and of course we did eat it.
We used to
the
run
house-
around up there.
Oh yeah.
So see,
And I remember one time we were down in the basement with all the tricycles and bicycles having a race around the island of washers and dryers, and RB comes down. Stop! Stop! Stop!
Leon told us that Sarah, who was very religious, then became actually a communist.
Yeah.
A card-carrying communist.
Right.
What do you know about this?
I don't know a lot. I know
My
she-
mother never mentioned it to us, you know.
I just know very little. It was sort of a Shonda.
Sort of.
Shonda is like, no.
Sort of. She had a friend who twisted her. Mary, her son ended up, was, oh darn it.
The number of people she associated with were communists. One of them was a physician. Was it Rutherford? I think it was Rutherford, Dr.
Betty
Rutherford.
Rutherford, but it was another, Alex Fair was the son of this one, Mrs. Fair, Mary
Right,
Fair.
Alex
She
Fair,
was,
yeah.
and her son taught at Lebanon Valley College, and he was also, but she
Fair.
was a
Her
very,
last name was Mary Fair, F-E-H-R.
you remember
Very
that?
good.
Good. Anyway, so, but I don't know anymore what she did, how much she was involved, but, my
And she was
mother,
the only one, nobody else.
no,
And she never talked about it openly, or it was all.
no.
But according to my mother, she changed it. She was no longer observant. She wasn't as religious.
Oh.
Is that true?
Right,
Is
right.
that something that was very obvious and well known in the family?
That's right. My mother sort of, and father stuck to, well, my father did whatever my mother wanted to do. Sounds like, you can see
Typical
that.
bad.
So they were more
He
involved
wore the
in
pants, but she picked
synagogue,
them
but
up.
when, Hadassah, she organized Hadassah in Lebanon.
Sarah.
Sarah.
Yeah, she was really.
She was the
Zionist.
founder of Hadassah in Lebanon, because it was.
Go ahead, I'm
Go-
sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, as you know, she was very big-hearted, and I think her attraction to communism or something related to it was sort of stemmed from that. I think she was very conscious of a certain amount of unfairness in society and so forth, and so that appealed to her.
You
But
think
that's
the
a
depression
scary.
was something that it was because of the depression. The depression, and I understand people in Lebanon were very seriously affected.
Oh yes.
You think that
So
that
how
had
was
any
it? How
effect?
did it affect you guys?
What's
The
that?
depression. How were you affected by the depression?
We didn't know it.
Yeah.
We weren't affected by it hardly at
As
all.
kids, we didn't, I don't remember, it wasn't good, but we didn't know any different.
Well, you said
Yeah,
you
know.
said your mom would feed.
What's that?
You said didn't your mother give sandwiches to someone every day
Oh,
or
yeah,
something?
we had,
Oh, yeah.
we remember though as kids, we had beggars come to the door all the time. Sometimes if it wasn't convenient, we had an alleyway, we lived in a 3-thing house, and there was an alleyway between our house and the next. And if we see somebody coming past the window, and if it was a time we didn't want to be interrupted or something, we'd pull the blinds and act like there was nobody home. But most of the time, and what they asked for was an onion sandwich. All I need is an onion sandwich. Can you imagine? So,
My mother would make up sandwiches. And,
We
right.
heard that our grandmother
Yeah,
did
Sarah
that as well.
did
But
that
we
too.
were fortunate. I mean, and the Levises were fortunate. They were already in business and, sort of successful. But I'm sure they had plenty of worries.
It sounded like the Uncle Leon talked about growing up and didn't sound like he was worried about buying his school ring, but that was a big expense. To me, that's like, if that's your worry, that doesn't sound like
Right.
much of a worry.
Well, they also said the pop-up gave a lot of credit to people.
Yes. I
Right.
think they were one of the first businesses that offered credit.
They gave a lot of credit, and they weren't too demanding when people couldn't pay. And later on, after the Depression, that created a lot of business actually. People whose grandparents would tell their children and people would tell their children and their grandchildren that back during the Depression, Levitzes, they
Were
couldn't
generous.
pay and Levitzes kept them going. I asked my dad about that, and I said, how come you were so generous? He said, well, if they didn't have the money, they couldn't pay, period.
So what? Can't squeeze blood out of a turnip.
Exactly.
Well, there are a lot
It's
of banks who
practical
will do
matter
that,
within.
actually, you know.
What?
They could have come take the furniture back.
Right, exactly, right, they could have taken.
Can you talk about what languages your parents must have known more than just Yiddish when they came to the U.S.?
Well, guess what? My mother was 18 when she came, so her English wasn't great, and she went to night school to learn, and she wrote fairly well, and only enough that we could understand, sort of. But
Neither
my
my
father
mother-
was 6, and
yeah.
he went to school, public school, when he was young.
But neither my mother nor my father could spell correctly. When I would get letters from them when I was in college, then it was really hard to decipher them. The spelling was way off.
But did they know some Russian and some German and some Lithuanian when they came over too?
Mostly Yiddish.
Mostly Yiddish. What was it like with Yiddish growing up?
Oh, well, we didn't know any different, but we understood everything. But my mother mostly then started talking English all the time. My father never spoke a lot of Yiddish. He understood, right?
But Daddy knew Pennsylvania Dutch too.
Yeah.
He would have cases where when on the second floor in the store, I don't know if you remember that, there was a full half a block of living room settings, one right after the other, sofas back to back, with the half a block.
I do
Really
remember that.
did have a tremendous selection in the store. And have these Pennsylvania Dutch people, and then they would decide talk about it among themselves, and
he'd
they'd speak
learn.
Dutch. And my dad understood everything. He would just sit on a chair and doze off, sort of.
He did that forever.
And wait till they're
Up to
ready,
the end.
and knew exactly what was going on, and he knew just when to get up and start writing the thing down and saying, this is which lamp do you want? You know?
So he was good in languages. He knew all the languages.
Yeah, you knew all of
And he was sort of the marketing person. He was the.
He was fundamentally a salesman. Is
Yeah.
basically what he did. And,
But RB, and then, I don't know if the boys, did any of them work in Lebanon before they opened their own store?
They must have.
Sid did.
yeah, and
Well, the
Sam,
older
Sam,
Was there,
Sam-
I'm sorry, you were going to say something.
When?
You were going to say something. No, you were going to say something.
I don't remember.
Was there a time when they traveled around?
Well, in the countryside here, my father would visit people and sell them stuff. I mean, he knew them, and
my
you
dad
know,
would go through the accounts receivable, and when he saw an account that was almost paid off, he would get in the car and go out in the country and pay a visit.
What, did he have like a wagon
And
with
they
stuff in
would
it? And
invite him in and serve him coffee and cake and whatnot. And he'd ask him, you know, maybe you need a new stove or this.
he'd sit on their couch and go, "This
then
seems
they'd end
you
up
need a new
coming
one."
in
What?
to the
I
store.
can tell
They'd
you-
come- they would wait for him, even if we had other salesmen. They would wait. I want to see Sam. You know, he probably promised him something. Off, you know.
So was RB a salesman or
Well,
not?
He wasn't the salesman. I mean, maybe he did sell, but he really was. I don't know what. I guess
Business.
in the business side of it.
He managed.
Yeah.
He
the
managed
office
the
and-
business.
I mean, did Sam like schmoozing it up with people? Was that his personality? Sam?
I didn't really
Did Sam like schmoozing it up with people?
Yeah,
That was-
yeah.
Yeah.
RB didn't. I don't think.
Yeah, Arby didn't.
I
Again,
remember
difference in
my dad
personality.
telling his story, because he worked there in the
Yeah.
early 50s, when TVs first started coming in. First of all, they had a truck with a crank-up TV tower. And what they do is they'd sell the TV, then they'd take the truck out to the home, start cranking up the tower to find out how tall they had to make the antenna so they could get a station. Okay? And my dad tells a story, one day came in and RB looks and he says, "Where are all the TVs? They're all gone." And Uncle Sam pulls out a slip and he says, "They're all out on demo." And just out of his pocket, all the names and addresses of where he sent all the TVs. Arby, where's our inventory?
Every new thing was, you know, a big deal. This first starts automatic washers. I know my father used to demonstrate a Bendix. That was the first automatic washer. And he'd pull down the door and he would stand on it to show how they're made.
It won't work that way now. We need a Bendix.
Yeah, Bendix, right. Anyway, I just remember Bendix.
The
So
Bendix,
anyway,
the Bendix.
just went from there. What next?
I gotta show you guys something. I happened to be in town when they were taking the facade
Oh, do you have
off
the limits?
of the Levitz building. And there is what was underneath
Yeah,
the facade.
It's interesting.
Levitz, yeah.
Well, we knew,
We actually saw that.
Yeah.
Not too.
Yeah.
You might have seen that.
yeah, I think I have a picture of myself sitting on it.
So when
Okay.
there was
Hey,
a,
all right,
don't
wait,
close
wait,
up. Don't close up. Yeah.
there was a facade on the building, like a dark maroon
Oh, no,
facade.
I didn't.
And driving down Cumberland Street, the facade is gone, and there's what was underneath it.
Smart apparel. Oh, I
Yeah.
see.
Oh, there's
I can't read
apparel.
It says smart
Okay,
apparel.
for those,
And what does that say?
those of you who don't know
Oh.
Betsy
House
and
furnishings.
Kathy
So that was
remember.
before the furniture.
We all
right.
know.
They had a
Everyone
clothing
here knows
department.
everybody. Clothing, yes. I used to
And,
buy
and,
clothing.
and every year before school, they had a fashion show.
Oh, right.
Oh,
of
yeah,
course.
And all
we
of
were
us
always
kids
We're in
were
the
modeling
fashion show.
clothes in the
remember
show
that?
window.
Right,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
we'd walk through the show window.
Right. And then they bribed us. They'd go to Brooks's for a Sunday afterwards. That was
Wow,
the
they
bribe.
didn't even pay us.
No, it was the bribe.
Paris, we went to the Palace of
That was
Sweets.
much
A palace. It could have been the palace. One
Remember
of
that?
those.
Remember the Palace?
Yeah, across the street
Yeah.
where Perlmutters
Oh,
are
that,
over.
yeah, I
open
want
the
that
store.
picture.
But you remember modeling
Yes,
those?
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
we all were models.
And eventually.
Harris, can you
employees, did
What?
you say
email
at the
me that
high?
picture?
I sure can.
They must have had 100 employees. And they had a big
100
warehouse.
employees?
They had
Levitz
a
furniture?
lot
I
of
don't
them.
remember.
Maybe, I don't know, maybe 50.
They had people, they sold carpet, they had people to lay
Oh, I
carpet.
can't remember it.
Oh, yeah, I had a big carpet department. I still, the guy in my class was the whole,
Harry Weaver, I remember it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
And,
you remember
uh,
and
Well,
the
just the
carpet,
way-
And we
Just
knew all
used
the
to make
people
the
that worked
Wii.
there. They
And
were
Bob
so
Hope.
devoted. They loved
Wii?
the
Oh, the
Levinsons.
Wii.
The Wii, and it
The
was
what?
like,
People, the workers, all of them. They just, you know.
Other
they were
businesses
treated
actually-
right and-
Other businesses came from that. They had Bob Hope, who used to be the appliance guy, and then he opened his own
He has
business.
a furniture store right now.
Yeah,
Different
he
ones.
started at Levitt's.
Right. So anyway, but all through this, they kept in touch with their relatives in Harrisburg. Every Sunday, we'd have to go to Harrisburg
You
and
went on
visit
going to
the
get
old
your tool.
folk, the people that they lived with. And they were really old-fashioned.
What's that mean?
What?
What's it mean they were old fashioned?
Well, I just remember, this is the funniest thing, and this isn't necessarily, that we never saw it. They would serve us soft-boiled eggs out of an egg cup. And, you know, for little kids, that was really different. I mean, it was just something different. And they had an accent, very heavy accent. To my parents, they spoke Yiddish, so they didn't speak too much English. But my father would smoke a cigar. On a Sunday, we'd get in the car and he'd smoke a cigar. And by the time we got there, we were all sick. Anyway, but we always sort of stayed in touch with those relatives.
My dad was a terrible driver. He was awful.
He was
RV
awful.
wasn't so good either.
In what sense? What was he terrible about? What was it?
Well, they would
Stop and start.
stop real quick, you know.
and no seatbelt, so you're all
Right.
flying all over the car.
I have
Except your mom used to put her arm out to stop you.
I have a
My
little
mother was the worst driver.
I have a little story about that car thing. It's like, so Papa, when I would drive with him, we'd go out like to the golf course and whatever, and we'd drive and you go woo, woo, and I always assumed he was like doing something weird with the gas, and I was a little kid, and woo, And then later on, when he died, this is in my head. Mom, you'll tell me if this is true or my own make up stuff. But I drove his car and I got in it and it went boom. So
was the car. He was a good driver. The car sucked.
I don't know. That's what I'm thinking.
Tell us a little about your growing up though in Lebanon, in Hillary. About your childhood. What was it like?
I mean, it was great. We had a ball. We always felt a little different. Like in school, we were always a small number of kids, Jewish kids in the class. And even my good friends, we were always different. Whatever we did, like, we didn't go out to eat with them because we, were kosher and that's what we knew. And, we thought I went to a birthday party and I know they had hot dogs. They were serving hot dogs and I couldn't eat them, So I had to tell my friends that I wouldn't be. They made me tomato soup.
So was there? You didn't know it, but there probably was a lot of anti-Semitism. You probably didn't feel it.
They just didn't know much. Now the foreigners, they were a little better, nicer, but the white Anglo-Saxon American, they weren't mean or anything, but we felt.
They were
different.
conscious of the difference. We were conscious of the.
But that was even before World War II, right? This was in the 30s. So
How did you find out in Glens Falls?
Well, in my generation, it was almost a non-issue. In my father's generation, that's another story. My father's generation, there was,
There still is.
Yeah,
From
well,
what I
that's sort of my
understand, yes,
generation.
there's more anti-Semitism than you're aware of.
well, in Lebanon there was a lot of anti-Semitism, but
But
we
did
weren't.
Lebanon, all the Jews owned all the businesses, it seems like. All the stores downtown were all
that was
owned
like
by
that all over
David.
the country. David
We were
made a
merchants,
list of 150 Jewish-owned businesses. Every store downtown was, except the H.L. Green, that was a 5 and 10, that was a chain, or Kresge. But every other one, everybody got into a business. That was their, and they were all fairly successful. And then all these, manufacturing.
But you were invited to your non-Jewish friends' homes. They would invite you
Yeah.
home, and you had non-Jewish friends.
Yeah.
We had Jewish friends that were, sort of living it. We had some.
But you
We
didn't.
sort of stuck together. We did things at the
So
shul.
that's just the
and-
same thing with our generation. And
Yeah.
I can remember some incidents where a customer would be unhappy about something for one reason or another, and they weren't satisfied, and then the anti-Semitic remarks would start to come out,
Sussy, you didn't feel funny saying to your friends, I can't eat the hot dogs? Did that bother you? Did you feel funny when you said you felt different?
Well, I
But
didn't,
did you have any
want to be
reluctance?
different. I didn't want to be different than all the other kids,
When
It's sort
you
of-
said the foreigners, you meant the Serbians and the
Serbians and-
Ukrainians.
They got along great. I don't know whether they were,
You got along great with them, you mean? Or
not necessarily, they weren't always involved in our,
they were a different
I
class?
see.
They were a different class.
Or different area, or different, just didn't
Yes.
didn't intermingle.
Yeah. Wasn't your dad an honorary member of their church or something? Didn't he go to church at the Serbian church?
My dad was like an honorary member of the Serbian church. He had so
Was he
many
Catholic?
customers.
I was gonna say that's a
He
good
had so
salesman.
many customers there, and he used to get invited to weddings and this and that, and he knew everybody there in the congregation practically.
How old were you when World War II started? Dad, you were 10. Sussy, you were 14, 15?
I was in, let's see, I graduated from high school in 45, so
Early teens.
early teens.
And what was the war effort like in Lebanon?
It was all
Oh, it
consuming. It was all
was-
consuming. Everybody was involved, even the children. The children would collect scrap paper and tin cans, involved everybody. You knew every day of the week that there was a war on.
And the USO was real busy, and the synagogue, we served meals once a week. We had the USO, and that's where a lot of Lebanon girls met their husbands a lot. Marty's
Is that because
sister
Indian Town Gap
met
was
her
nearby,
husband.
or what?
Because Indian Town Gap, there were a lot of people, Jewish boys, and they all came. I have pictures of them sitting at a table in the old shul, and the women would cook, and it was a big deal. And the young girls would be pictures.
Indian Town Gap was
That's a good deal.
was the military reservation
Right,
close
right.
by.
Right.
And that's how my parents met. My dad was
Yeah.
at Indian Town Gap, and they would have Jewish people come to Jewish homes here in Lebanon for lox and bagel breakfast. And my dad came in. Now Phil Levinson remembers because they were going to try to fix my mom up with this soldier meeting, and mom wasn't quite ready. So as they came into the house at 335 South 8th Street, and they shuffled my dad to the right so that he wouldn't see Miriam coming down the stairs. And they planned this meeting, and lo and behold, they ended up getting married, and here we are. So, yeah, that's how my mom and dad met, over lox and bagel breakfast. My dad missed his bus to go back to Indian Town Gap because he was sitting there stuffing his face. Who knows?
Sort of embarrassing incident in Indian Town Gap with our rabbi. Our rabbi at that time, who as it finally turned out wasn't even a rabbi, he was a cantor, but he pawned himself off as a rabbi. He was having invited to dinner there at the officers' mess, and they had at that time German prisoners here in Lebanon, and they'd keep them out at Indian Town Gap, and they would send them out and work the field. They're actually working the farms in Lebanon County, and some of those prisoners they used as servants at the officers' quarters in Indian Town Gap. They used some of the German prisoners as servants and waiters in the officers' quarters. So the rabbi was invited out for some kind of occasion, and this German prisoner came to wait on him, and the rabbi picked up his knife and pointed at the guy's throat and said, "Don't come near me." So it was a really embarrassing incident. The general was the commanding general of the post was very, very, very upset about it, and it caused a lot of embarrassment in the community.
And so what year was that? Did the people know in the United States what the Germans were doing to the Jews? Was it?
You know, a lot of what happened with the Jews in Germany we didn't really know about till after the war.
Okay.
A lot of that was people did know. But, I mean, it was not general knowledge. People who should know did know, and
Well, what did you guys know? What did you think?
well, we knew that there were concentration camps, but we didn't know
What's
till after the war
How?
the horrors that went on.
So this rabbi just didn't like him because he was German, not because of
Exactly.
any kind of Jewish.
Exactly. Well, the rabbi actually lost his family. He had family back in Czechoslovakia, which he presumably lost. It was during the war. He didn't just lost contact.
Which one, do you remember?
Martin.
Oh, Marty, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How did that?
Strange situation. He was a cantor, and he actually pawned himself off as a rabbi, but this didn't come out till later.
And is that when the synagogue was in what was the library later?
Yes, yes. Mm-hmm.
But how did that play out, especially here in this area where a lot of people still spoke German? Were there questions of allegiance and stuff around here?
I just don't know. Uh-huh. Okay, well, it's wonderful to see
I'm
you.
gonna send you, each one of you, to tell you what I want. I need your names of your children and their birth dates. So I'll send it on to Jeffrey Myerson, who's gonna put it on ancestry.com, and it's under, I'll ask him exactly what the title is, so that if you wanna look it up, but at least we'll be recorded,
Absolutely.
all the
Can we
details.
take a
that
break?
they-
Thank you guys. This was lovely.
Okay.
I'm sorry, we're gonna take a